Welcome to the HR Think Tank, our podcast that uncovers the power a trusted workforce has on team performance, culture, and morale. We gather insights from experts, business leaders, and HR professionals to help you lead your team more effectively. Here's your host, Kai No, CEO of Verify Now, a trusted provider of background screening services.
We're more connected with our Asia Pacific neighbours today than we've ever been, and we're more in need of the benefits that come with that relationship. But as a leader, how can you best navigate the cross-cultural challenges and opportunities that come with working in an international team? Our guest today is New South Wales Chair and Head of Asia and International Markets for KPMG, Doug Ferguson, an expert in successful international business relationships who's lived abroad for over 10 years and has been managing international teams for the past 10 years. Doug has extensive experience managing people from multiple countries and has learned a lot about effective leadership along the way. He's also been involved with a number of important not-for-profit organisations over the past decades that have helped build international relationships that have benefited all Australians. Welcome to the HR Think Tank, Doug.
Thanks, Kai. Great to be here.
Thank you for your time. So, Doug, you're the New South Wales Chair and Head of Asia and International Markets at KPMG. That's a significant leadership position. You know, you've got 300 partners and you've got almost 5,000 staff. Can you tell us about your leadership journey and what is your approach to leadership?
Firstly, thanks very much for having me, Kai. It's great to see you again. We've known each other for a long time, and the work that you and Kat Tao did on establishing the Vietnamese leadership dialogue was amazing. Okay, so on my leadership journey, I'm 48. So if you work back, I was very fortunate to grow up in Mackay in North Queensland. I moved up there at a very young age. My father and mother set up a mining services company, and I had the most incredible childhood playing rugby league with boys from the Torres Strait Islands, you know, going to school. And that all changed when I was about 13, came down to boarding school in Sydney. And it was a big change for me, but it gave me the opportunity to go to a wonderful school, make great friends, and then start my leadership journey through sport, through cadets, and ultimately to be the school captain in my final year, which was an amazing opportunity, and sort of start to think about public speaking and leadership and being a good ambassador for the organisation. Then usual journey through uni. I went to Taiwan in my final year to study Mandarin Chinese, and I went from not speaking any Chinese at all to being able to speak quite comfortably by 9 months later. But it was much more than learning the language. As an individual, I learned a lot about myself, being isolated from my family. You know, we were there during an interesting time, and I felt as though I really grew as a person just by being on my own at a critical age. Let's say I was 22. Then I started my professional career with KPMG, and I moved through the audit business quickly into transaction services and moved to Hong Kong. Moved to Hong Kong in 2001. So my wife and I went up there looking for the great experience. And, I guess I was an emerging leader, but I was still very much in the mix, doing the work. Yeah. But that changed a bit when I went to Beijing in 2003. I really wanted to get the experience of working in China. And all of a sudden I became the only English speaker in the team, and quite often quite isolated with my team. And I had to do a lot of things as a leader and develop myself. So I've had a great experience with KPMG. It's been a wonderful journey through leadership opportunities. And I find myself having spent 10 years in China, being a liquidator of Lehman Brothers, coming back to Australia, leading our Asia business, and now the New South Wales chairman. It's been just an incredible journey, but something that I have strategically gone after in terms of a 5-year plan. Yeah. And it's been amazing, but it's got a long way to go.
Can I ask you, along the way, so, as you're progressing through your career, did you have champions? Did you have sponsors who said, Doug, we see you as an emerging leader, we want to help you? What was that like for you? Was it something that you had to go out and ask for, or were people sort of tapping you on the shoulder?
Well, it starts with my dad, who's been an amazing father and sponsor. And then I was very fortunate through high school to have some incredible teachers who I still stay in touch with because they were so impactful to me. When I joined KPMG in Hong Kong, I met a man named Paul Bruff, who was the head of the business. He's equivalent to who I am now, and actually someone that I always try to think about and model myself on, because he was a courageous leader. He had a great sense of humour, and he sponsored me. He made me a partner at the age of 33, which is a huge step. And he gave me the opportunity to work on Lehman Brothers. Then I moved back to Australia, and Gary Wingrove, who's our global chief operating officer now, was the head of my division, became the Australian CEO. He backed me all the way as well. And now I've also got other people. The Honourable Warwick Smith is someone who I met through a trip to China in 2012, and someone who's been incredibly strong supporter of me and helped me to grow as a leader as well. So you've got to have sponsors, Kai. Yeah. You've got to have people. It takes a bit of chemistry and a lot of effort, but it's definitely an important thing. If you want to be a leader, you've got to have strong sponsors.
So now, just focusing on your approach to leadership, I've had many interactions with you, Doug. I've seen how you work with people that you directly, work with at KPMG, but also with stakeholders outside. But I'm keen to hear from you. What's your approach to leadership?
Leadership is a privilege. Leadership is something that requires courage and takes a lot of effort to develop yourself, and you have to put yourself into uncomfortable situations. So it starts with a mindset of wanting to be a leader. Yeah. And then how to be a good leader, I think, is about looking for ways to serve and help others. Okay. And I start with watching and listening. Asking questions, and then once I have a clear picture, trying to be decisive, and then help with my group of partners. So say I'm leading 300 partners, is to work with them so that they are understanding what the message is, what the program of change is, and so that they can then distribute leadership through their teams as well. It's about listening, understanding, looking for what's actually happening, and then communicating, and then being regular. Just keep following things up to make sure that things are getting done. It's sometimes frustrating when you think something's being done. You sent the email, but nothing's being done. It's about following it through.
And have you seen your leadership approach, change over from the start of your career to now? And can you talk about some of those maybe big things that you've learned that has impacted those approaches?
Yes. So leading from smaller teams to the whole of the firm in New South Wales requires big changes, and you can't just go from zero to hero. It takes fundamental building blocks. But I was very fortunate in my time, let's say 10 years in China, to have really understood the importance of observing and listening and asking questions and checking data before opening my mouth. And I think the young me would have said, "I've got this. I'm going to tell you how it is." Now, I'm sometimes criticised for being too conservative. I sit back and I watch, but then ultimately, once I think I've got the right picture, then I'm trying to be decisive and trying to be more bold and courageous in those decisions. But life is complicated, and sometimes you have to test. You have to test what's going on and see whether you're right, and then go in. But you have to make decisions as a leader. You have to make decisions, and you have to stick to them, and you have to be able to communicate the why, the why, and then the how.
Don't sit on the fence.
Don't sit on the fence. No, the world needs courageous leaders.
So, Doug, you've spent 10 years working, in Beijing, in Hong Kong, and in other markets, and you've traveled extensively. I want to ask you now some questions around managing an international team. What's been some of the cross-cultural opportunities with managing an international team, and what have been some of the challenges? And I guess when we talk about the challenges, if you could provide us some tips in terms of overcoming some of those challenges, that'd be great as well.
Okay. Well, I've also been leading for the last 10 years, our Asia International Markets team in Australia, servicing Asian companies. So there's about 20 years, plus I'm married to an Australian Chinese family, and so I've got lots of cross-cultural experience, and I try to do it in my own way. Look, when I was in China, as I said before, I was quite often the only person who was English speaking. I had German clients, American clients, French clients, Japanese clients who wanted me to communicate the findings of the due diligence to them, but all of the information was in Chinese, and our team had to work in quite often remote places throughout China to understand the true financial information and the strategy of the organisation, and that required a really strong multidisciplinary and multicultural team. We all had to do our part, if you like. And I found the team expected me to be very strong in certain things, like managing the client, making sure that the fee and the scope and the timetable was fair and reasonable, but then to give them the trust to do their work, to do the analysis, which was hugely complicated at times, and then for me to come back and analyse and ultimately write up a report that was suitable for an international client. So, but an amazing experience being thrown into that situation at a very young age. Lots of funny stories, Kai. I mean, being in a meeting room for 12 hours a day where everyone's smoking except for you, and that was just the norm for Chinese business meetings in those days. Going to functions with all sorts of strange food, and I used to often come back 5 kilos lighter from my due diligence assignments because I'd sit a few things out. But the reason I'm saying this is there's a lot of fun in working in a cross-cultural environment, but you have to build trust. With your local Chinese team, and by the end I feel as though that was achieved. But lots of fun.
And Doug, I feel like that experience that you're talking about, those 10 plus years you spent working abroad really helped you as a leader when you came back to Australia and then managed the international team here. I'm sure that would have given you lots of cultural understanding, but also kudos with your team to say, Doug's out there, he speaks language as well. He understands, so you got buy-in from, from your employees, from your staff already because of that.
More seriously than that, I understood what it's like to walk in their shoes. I know what it's like to be in a minority situation where you feel, where you look up, there isn't many opportunities. So I that's why I've been a really strong sponsor of cultural diversity and inclusion at KPMG. Because it's a personal lived experience, and B, it's absolutely the right thing to do to ensure that you are leveraging all the skills and passions of your people, not just the obvious language skills and cultural skills, but networks and ways of working and thinking. So I'm deeply passionate about that. I'm very proud to lead an organisation that's increasingly multicultural, and that's been on a great journey over the last 3 years to recognise and promote leaders with cultural diversity.
So now I just want to touch on the challenges managing an international team. If we can talk about some of those challenges that you've seen, might not necessarily just be your experience, but what you've seen with other business leaders, and then give us some tips around how do you manage that? How do you build trust? How do you foster alignment within an international team?
Well, I've had lots of experience working across different cultures and national jurisdictions. So Lehman Brothers is possibly the best example, Kai, where we had teams running in Japan, in China, in Taiwan, in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Indonesia, and Singapore, all obviously subject to local laws, local cultures and languages, but all working together as a KPMG team. And for the best interests of the creditors of Lehman Brothers. Hugely complicated, but actually when you, as a leader, listen and understand issues that are local, but also share the big picture and provide the resourcing and the leadership that's required to probably lead through a very complex set of circumstances, it kind of all fell into place, if you like. But there's been a lot of challenges. I had lots of really difficult scenarios with Lehman Brothers, getting sued in 14 different jurisdictions was tough. There was a lot of pressure and stress. Yeah. People were working ridiculously long hours. It was the GFC, for heaven's sake. Yeah. So there was a lot of fear. People were worried about their jobs, their family's livelihood. But I had very strong leaders above me, and I tried to be calm and just leverage the skills with the team and just make sure that they're all on the right track, bringing work through the right times.
Because it sounds like you really connected everyone with the why. Like people knew the mission, so that was that central connection.
You got to have the purpose, and our purpose was to recover funds. We couldn't recover all of them, but to recover funds for the creditors of Lehman Brothers, and that we made that personal about families that had made their investments. Now, often the creditors were other financial institutions, but you have to create why we're doing this, why we're working these ridiculous hours and taking on this pressure. Yeah. And we did that. We did that very successfully, and we got great results.
Did you have any communication difficulties or different expectations? Like, how did you manage those challenges?
We had multiple language capability in the firm, so I worked with local partners in each country, and they were able to communicate. Yeah. English is a largely spoken language throughout the KPMG network throughout Asia, but we got by. I think it was well, again, distributed leadership. Don't try to do it all yourself. You've got to keep breaking it down into groups of leaders that then lead pods of teams, and that actually feel as though they have the authority to be leaders as well, and there becomes like a lovely pyramid, if you like, that flows to ultimately a great result. And that's no different to any organisation that's running at the moment.
So, Doug, how, you've got a diverse team, you've got an international team. How does that impact client services for you?
Obviously, our clients expect the very best quality of service and communicated in a way that is culturally appropriate. So when we're looking after Japanese or Chinese or Korean or Indian companies, it stands to reason that we'll have members on our team that are culturally diverse and that are comfortable in communicating and understanding and working as an important back channel. Whereas a lot of the team that are doing the work don't need to be as involved in that. So it's about bringing the right skills to bear at the right time for the ultimate job. But our clients, both international clients and also increasingly domestic clients in the public sector and in the private sector, have culturally diverse leadership teams. They expect and want to see cultural diversity in the client service teams, and that's what we are. That's what we're all about in terms of delivering. Plus, obviously, helping to create the next batch of leaders for KPMG.
So, Doug, now I just want to move on to a slightly different topic, and this is about what leaders need. Some of the skills that they should think about developing, improving, if they're going from managing a small team, let's say, less than 30, to managing a larger workforce, a larger team. What are some of the key skills that you should be thinking about? Hey, I need to improve. I need to work on this.
I'm fortunate because I lead a small team, and I also have a leadership role across the whole organisation. So the small team is the Asia International Markets business, and the large one is obviously the firm of 300 partners and 4,500 people. I think it's really important, as I've said before, to be a strong communicator, but before that, a very strong listener and observer. You need to look at data. You need to understand how your people are feeling about their own lives. When you're leading such a large number of people in an organisation, it's going to be the multiplicity of interests, but everyone has got an opinion, and you have to create opportunities to have smaller discussion groups, to listen and to hear things, and then have the ability, as someone who spends most of my time out in the market, is understanding the big picture trends and how those big picture trends are coming home to roost in your organisation, how your people are feeling, what sort of things they're seeing, and then trying to connect those things. So as I said, the most important skill is listening, understanding and comprehending mega trends that are emerging, what are the next big waves, and then communicating. Yeah. But in amongst all of that is being able to make decisions, the right decisions, and to have other leaders in a distributed model also bought in and executing those decisions.
Yep. So judgment is really important.
Judgment is incredibly important. You know, when you're a leader, you have to make hundreds of decisions every day. And some of these are really big, important decisions around people's well-being and safety, around diversity and inclusion, around environmental issues that feel as though sometimes they're quite a long way away, but they're really, really important to our people. Yeah, really important to our people.
What about some of the people skills? So I want to just throw out a few things for you. You know, like emotional intelligence, political intelligence, or I guess stakeholder management, if you want to call that. What about some of those things? How does that morph from a small team to a big team?
Well, I think being authentic is the first important thing. You know, realizing that the difference between you and many of the younger people you're leading is age and opportunity and privilege. So keep it real. I mean, you are there. You're very privileged to have a leadership role. Try to be as human as possible in your interactions with people. Don't go to your office. You know, sit out on the floor, be visible, smile, say hello, walk the floors, listen to people, crack jokes where appropriate, of course. So firstly is really be authentic. The next thing I would say is it's a constant journey of watching what's going on and listening to others both inside and outside of the organisation, and then sharing those observations with your team of leaders so that they can distribute and do their job as leaders as well.
You know, Doug, I was just reflecting on what you're saying, and I agree with what you say, because whether you're leading a small team or a big team, your values should be aligned with who you are and how you lead your business, right? And so you talking about authentic leadership, I'm all about that. I completely see that, because, you know, if you're leading a small team and then suddenly you've got this ego boost and you're managing a different team and you're a completely different person. I mean, that would make your staff sort of question who you are.
Exactly.
Right? You've been this one person for the last 10 years, 15 years, and then all of a sudden, there's a different version of you? So, like,
you see it happen all the time too, Kai. Unfortunately, and it's like a frog boiling slowly in the water. All of a sudden, after someone's been in a very senior leadership position for 3 or 4 years, they can come across as quite different. And I think it's very obvious to those that you're leading when that happens, and it's really important to just keep focusing in on the fact that, okay, you may have access to these incredible meetings, lunches and dinners and people. You may have the luxury of having a nice home, but you're leading people, some of them as young as 18. You know, a lot of people in very different set of circumstances. And COVID was a classic experience of as trying to, as a leader, to comprehend and understand how our young people were coping at home in very, very difficult set of circumstances, and putting the necessary thought and care into supporting them. So I find it really important to be humble, you know, to show humility at all stages. And the one thing I firmly believe is the only thing that you have at the end of it all is integrity and your values. And sometimes you have to make tough decisions and you have to say no to stuff because they're not in line with your values, and that you don't feel will reflect well on you or the organisation, even if there's an opportunity to be taken. And I think that is the most important thing around enduring leadership qualities, is making the right decisions that are based on values and integrity. And that's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do, mate.
Doug, you said this earlier, in our conversation. You said, as a leader, you are constantly tested. Sometimes there's big tests, sometimes there's small tests, but you're constantly tested. And that's why it's important to understand, your values and also to maintain that integrity. Because if you start chipping away and compromising it bit by bit because you're changing roles or you're, growing in your leadership stature, for example, when you look back on it, you might have nothing left. When you look back in the values.
Well, you see it every day, don't you? You see people that have been at the most senior levels and for whatever reason, they make decisions that really do tarnish their reputation. But you can't always make these decisions on your own. You need to have counsel. You need to genuinely have mentors. We've talked about sponsors, but mentors and advisors that you can talk to in confidence, and then you can run scenarios past. And then you need to test things with your group. So when I talked about pods, is if you've got an idea around an initiative, go back and test it, for heaven's sakes, before you make the announcement, and see what they feel. Because if I might think it's a great idea to have someone in as a speaker or to put on a certain event for our staff, but they might go, that's really coming from a male, sporty privileged background. You need to rethink that and how that might look. So I think you've got to have good advisors along the way, but you do get better at making decisions and being decisive, because people that can't make decisions as leaders, they just hold the show up. You've got to be able to make decisions and take risks, and you're probably going to get, in a perfect world, you'd probably get 85 to 90% of your decisions right. But if they're really big decisions, don't rush them. Take the time, test them, and then go. And when you go big and go hard.
So Doug, thanks for that advice there. I want to now look at the bigger picture. You and I were connected through, I guess, Australia-Asia engagement, and you came very early on to support the initiative that I started with Kat Tao, the Australia-Vietnam Leadership Dialogue, and still appreciate that very much.
When was that? 2017?
That was actually, we started the engagement about 2016. We launched in 2017, but the engagement was 2016 was when we kicked it.
You and Kat Tao have done such a great job on that. It's got enduring benefit to our nation. It's such a legacy for you both.
Thank you. It was a life-changing experience, and I'm still very much supportive and will support any initiative that will improve Australia's engagement with the region. And I guess that's the question that I want to ask you, because at the time of our engagement, you were leading the KPMG International Markets team, but you were also the chair of Asia Society.
That's right.
So I want to get your opinion on why you think it's important for Australia to maintain or probably improve our engagement with the region.
Well, it's the region we live in to start with. The census shows that we have a hugely multicultural population base with Indian, South Asian, let's say, and East Asian people. But from a business perspective, we're a trading nation. We rely on export markets in Asia. We source many of the things that we take for granted in our shopping centres from Asia. And we have been hugely dependent on foreign investment from countries like Japan, from China, from Korea, and we'll continue to need foreign investment. So it's obvious, but it's complicated because we have, very deep roots in a sort of Anglo-Celtic background with respect to our Indigenous heritage as well. But we have been on a very rapid ascent into a multicultural and connected part of southern tip of Asia, if you like, alongside New Zealand. I've been involved in this for quite a number of years. I started as a student studying Chinese, and when I told my friends I was going to study Mandarin Chinese, they thought I was absolutely mad. They were sort of understood Japanese, but the rise of China has just been phenomenal, and it has obviously totally reshaped our region, both in a really positive way, and now in a way that's is a little uncertain. But we have to continue to have senior people that understand, that have networks and can communicate with the leaders of all countries across the Asia Pacific region. And I'm confident that we do have those leaders, and that we are through your organisation, through the Vietnam Leadership Dialogue, through the Asia Society, through the New Colombo Plan, we're committed to developing future leaders there.
Yeah, I see our future is greater engagement with our regional partners or neighbours, if you want to call it. I mean, that's where the future lies. Our population at the moment is 25 million. We are sitting next to over 3 billion people when we're talking about immediate region. There is so much opportunity for collaboration, not just in business, but in education and climate,
arts,
environment,
culture, sport, healthcare, research, renewable energy.
So much. There's so much that we've
got to just focus on the things that aren't sensitive and progress those things. At the same time, we've got to obviously, continue to work closely with the leaders of Southeast Asia and India. We know about the Quad, we know about AUKUS. That's all fine from a business perspective. We've got to continue to try and look after our relationships with our suppliers and our export markets and our people that are working in those overseas markets.
This is why I'm so grateful that you personally, but also KPMG has been so supportive of the various bilateral dialogues that Australia has with our regional neighbours, which brings me to a different question, right? Because you're involved in a number of different not-for-profits. You're sitting on the board of Reconciliation Australia at the moment, still involved with Asia Society. You're involved with a range of other not-for-profits, and you have been for quite some time. Why do you get involved with not-for-profits, right? Because you're a busy man already. And then how do you decide which engagements that you can actually contribute to?
I've always believed that you need to find alignment with your purpose and your job. Okay, so if you look at the Asia Society, if you look at the Australia-China Business Council, if you look at the Vietnam Leadership Dialogue, work that we're now doing with Asia Link Business, it's aligned to my day job, which is leading our Asia International Markets business. So there's people that I meet, there's opportunities and things that I hear that I can leverage back into our organisation to make us stronger. But then it comes down to also the purpose and the passion. For me, it's been about having a child, an experience at a very young age that shaped my personality. I feel deeply committed to ensuring that others at a young age at least have the awareness and the opportunity of studying and living and working in the Asia region. And that's why the New Colombo Plan is something I've been involved with for probably 8 years now, actually. And I hope to always be involved with the New Colombo Plan. So I do find time, and again, reconciliation, it goes back to the childhood memories of playing rugby league with Torres Strait Islander kids. But then I also, the more I have studied and learnt and spoken to people through Jarwin, through the next generation of leaders, I feel as though there's an incredible opportunity through treaty, through truth-telling and a voice for us to be able to unite as a nation. So I feel as though I'm just trying to help in some small way to contribute the skills and knowledge and time that I have to help much bigger issues. And there's other things that I have had to let go to make that time available. So some things you get involved with and you think, after sort of 3 or 4 years, it's been a good experience, but it's not really core to who I am and who I want to be and what sort of legacy I want to lead. So, you do transition off, and that could be your day job or it could be a volunteering role. But if you focus on connection to your job and also to the things you're passionate about, I think you're on the right mark.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's really good advice, because that's something that I've had to consider, but also other leaders I've spoken to, they say, help me decide, because I've got these opportunities and I feel like I could help, but where can I make the biggest impact? And where is it going to give me fulfillment? Because it's not just about what I'm going to give, but it's also, what you feel from it. And if there is alignment with your values and your purpose, I guess that makes the decision a lot easier.
You also get exposure to simple things like if you want to be a non-executive director somewhere down the road, getting involved in non-for-profit boards. Sometimes there's more issues that you have to face into there, because often they're less well capitalised or less experience sitting around the table. It's really good training. It's really good training and experience. So some of the things that I've been through, even in the last 6 months in my non-for-profit roles, have made me feel as though I've grown and I feel stronger and maybe even a bit tougher. So, it's about serving, but it's also putting yourself into situations where you're getting exposure to people and situations to become a better leader yourself, which is great.
So Doug, you've talked about the not-for-profits and the experiences that you've had from it and the lessons that you've learned, and it's made you a better person, made you a better leader. I just want to go back in time a little bit, and this I guess goes back to your childhood a little bit more, because you've got a great interest in agribusiness as well, and this is fueled by your family's business interests, grazing business, in Central West New South Wales. Can you tell us a little bit more about this experience and how that shaped you?
Yeah, again, I think living and working in the city in a high pressured role, you need to have a release valve.
Yeah.
And for me, I was up at the farm on the weekend, seeing my parents first and foremost, but also just to disconnect. We got up there in the afternoon. We had a beautiful paddock bonfire, sat around with mum and dad, a glass of wine, watched the sun go down, looking over the fence at the black cattle that are looking incredibly healthy at the moment. It just makes you feel really free and free of thought, and just in a very sort of beautiful part of Australia.
Yeah.
And it's always been important to me. We've had properties in the Hunter Valley before, when I was in my sort of year 9 and year 10 and year 11 times. And I used to love my time, out in the country just alone. And I grew up in Mackay, surrounded by cane fields. Some people love beaches. Some people love surfing. I think I don't. I'm very much a country person. I love the heart of Australia, the amazing characters that you meet in country, rural areas, and I just love the peace and quiet and the lifestyle. So, again, everyone's got their place that they go to, and I go to there virtually in my mind. If I'm in a really tough situation, quite often I go to thinking about something on the farm, and it just centers me, and then you realise that you're going to be there soon.
So that's your secret sauce, Doug, because I've always wondered, since meeting you, I'm like, there is something calming and grounding about you, even in high-pressured environments. And we've been in a couple of high-pressure situations, and I'm like, how does he stay so grounded? And I can see why. You've got a place, you've got a sense of connection to the family, but also to your upbringing, your roots, and you can calm yourself. I mean, I didn't know that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Well, it's great, and relationships are the other part. I'm very fortunate to have incredible support from my wife, Moy, and strong foundations with my kids. So it gives you that place that if it all goes terribly wrong, and in being in very senior leadership positions, you can have an off day and it can cost you dearly. Okay, so you have to know that in your mind, if it all does go wrong, you've got strong family support. You've got your family farm to go to if you have to. But otherwise, it's about staying as a leader authentic, real, genuine, truthful, values based, and with integrity. And most problems, frankly, are not problems. In a month's time, they just feel like it at the time. So try to stay calm in crisis, and confident in your ability, based on experience, to work through issues with the right team. You've got to back yourself, because when you look around, and this is happening to me all the time now, because I grew up in a very hierarchical structure where you always looked up to the senior partners. Now when I look up, there's not too many left. It's basically me. So it's my time to be the sort of leader and sponsor of the business and leadership of the team that I had with guys like Paul and Gary that I've spoken about, that were just absolutely titans. Yeah.
I think we're so fortunate to have you as a strong business leader, and representing, and also being a strong voice for Australia's engagement with the region, but all the other aspects of life that you've supported Australia in. I'm really grateful for that, Doug, and I'm really grateful for your time today as well, coming on the show and sharing your tips on managing an international team, but also giving us some exposure into your leadership journey. I think that's been great for us to hear. And Doug, we're going to move now to the Fast Five. So are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
What was your first job and why did you get it?
My first job was as a 12 or 13-year-old sweeping up iron filings and waste plastic from my father's factory floor in Mackay. So I got it because I had to earn some pocket money. It was pretty simple.
And what's something interesting that's not on your CV?
Well, not many people know that I speak Chinese, but what's most interesting is despite being the New South Wales chairman, I'm a mad Brisbane Broncos and Queensland Maroons supporter, and that's largely because that's where I grew up and old habits die hard.
I should have expected that, but I actually didn't know that as well. What have you learned about leadership and working in a team that you would want to teach your younger self?
I think that younger people assume that they're going to be leaders. A lot of people have very strong leadership capabilities when they're young, but unless you actually put yourself into situations where you can develop, and unless you actively learn, then you may not become the leader that you hoped when you were 18. Leadership is a privilege. Leadership comes with a lot of responsibility and lots of challenges, but one should never complain about leadership and the journey towards leadership because ultimately it enables you to become the best version of yourself and to help so many other people.
Can you provide a highlight from working in a trusted team?
Yeah, I've worked in lots of great teams, whether they're in surf lifesaving or rugby or rowing crews or many aspects, but obviously work. Let's talk about work. The team that we formed between 2008 and 2012 to look after the Lehman Brothers insolvency was fantastic. You know, multi-jurisdictional, multicultural, multi-skilled, but we all had a single purpose. We came together. We worked very well in solving a very complicated set of circumstances, and we're still mates to this day. So a great team.
What would you like your legacy to be?
For me, I'll answer that in three ways. One is for me to be the best version of myself, and in doing so to help those around me. Secondly is more practical, is I've always tried to help young Australians to think about a life and a career with Asia, maybe in Australia or in Asia, but working with Asia. And therefore, the things like the New Colombo Plan are very, very important to me in making sure that the next generation of Australian leaders are really engaged. They've got strong networks, experience across the Indo-Pacific region. The last thing I'll say, and something that's burning brightly for all of us at the moment, is reconciliation. I'm playing a small part on the board of Reconciliation Australia. I'm learning like everybody else, but we're on an incredible journey together as a united group of Australians towards a voice to make sure that 60,000 years of Australian history is properly understood and that Indigenous Australians are given the opportunity to shape the policies and the direction of their own future, but we do it together. Kai, thanks very much for having me on today. It's been wonderful. It's great to see you again.
Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing, so much of yourself as well and in your time today. I will say that I'm very active in LinkedIn, and if people want to connect with me, I'd love to connect in with your audience. And it's been a great opportunity. Thanks for all the time that you and your amazing team have put into this series. And I look forward to following all of the others that come through, because you've had amazing speakers so far. Well done.
Thanks, Doug. And thanks for your support. I do hope that you can share our podcast with your network as well. So great to have you on the show. And please, anytime you want to have a chat, more than welcome.
Good on you, mate. Thank you very much.
Today's guest was Doug Ferguson, the New South Wales Chair and Head of Asia and International Markets for KPMG, a leading global professional services firm dedicated to driving growth and enhancing connectivity. We got insights into the importance of fostering mutually beneficial international relationships with our regional neighbours, a greater understanding of the challenges and opportunities of working in a cross-cultural team, and tips on how to lead such a team. You can learn more about KPMG Australia on their website in the show notes, and you can also follow Doug on LinkedIn.
Thanks for listening to the HR Think Tank with Kai No. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share our podcast with your network. Check out the show notes for any resources mentioned in today's episode, or visit the Verify Now website for more information.